5 times fittest man on earth, Matt Frazier, said it best. He said if every athlete could just take a pill for sleep and water, everyone would take it because it would feel like cheating.
Protein, you really got to prioritize. And if you start with protein, if you base every meal around quality protein, other things start to fall into place.
You can push, you can pull, you can squat, and you can hip hinge. Doing movements that encapsulate all 4 of those movements is really helpful to be like, okay, that's a full workout.
Happy New Year and welcome to Strength Weekly, the weekly show that keeps you updated on everything from around the barbell game. We are doing things a little differently to kick off 2024 with literally the only fitness resolutions that matter. We are highlighting 3 things that are going to help you achieve whatever goal you set out to achieve. First off, how bodyweight training can help anyone, yes, literally anyone, stay on track with their fitness and strength goals. We're also going to talk about really the only macronutrient counting that everyone needs to do. I hate counting macros. This is the only thing I do. It's kind of been life-changing, and I'm not pulling my punch on that. And third, we're talking about how to get the best sleep of your life, which is important for every athlete, weekend warrior to the absolute elite. But before we get to that, I want to say subscribe to BarBend on YouTube, because we are going to be back next week with all the news from around the strength world. Heavy deadlifts, clean and jerk snatches, maybe a few competition wins and world records. Who knows? It's going to be a crazy year. Phil, what are you looking forward to most in 2024, and why is it Valentine's Day?
So it's Valentine's Day because by then I should have exquisitely crafted visible abs, and I'm very excited to finally have that achieved after making that New Year's resolution every time for the last 20 years.
Sometimes the abs hide under the bushel. I know I've been hiding mine for years. I do want to say a quick disclaimer. I'm going to read this verbatim so the lawyers don't get mad at me. Hey, folks, the content on BarBend, including Strength Weekly, is meant to be informative in nature, but it shouldn't take the place of advice and or supervision from a medical professional. The opinions, articles, and videos from this media property are not intended for use as diagnosis, prevention, and or treatment of health problems. Speak with your physician if you have any concerns. Phil, why do you think some people in the barbell game scoff when they hear bodyweight training?
I think there's something about not being able to pack on some loads for added resistance when we know that resistance training is what usually or is what is proven to add gains. But just because you don't have a barbell or some weight plates doesn't mean that you can't get those same benefits if you just do the work. Just got to do the work.
Bodyweight training is useful for any type of athlete. And I think what's really interesting is when I talk to athletes at the top of their game in elite strength sports, powerlifting, weightlifting, etc., they do more bodyweight training the longer they're in the game and the more experience they get under their proverbial belts than people necessarily anticipate and than a lot of people think. And I think that's because they see the benefit of mixing up the type of resistance training and also just the nice hypertrophic bulletproofing your body effect that basic bodyweight training can have for a number of reps accrued across the months and years. Why don't we go back and forth with some of the reasons we really like bodyweight training? Mine, I'll start off. I'll kick things off. I love kicking things off.
Go for it.
I'm selfish. Bodyweight training eliminates excuses not to train. If I'm on the road or my schedule is crazy at home and I can't make it to the gym, bodyweight training allows me to get in some resistance training, to get some load in a very short period of time with basically zero excuses. And one of my favorite things to do is if I have just missed my training session because life got in the way, I will make sure that I accrue, and this is just me personally, I will accrue 120 push-ups and 120 squats, just body weight squats, right? And I feel like I've done something and I've given my body a stimulus that it responds to. One of my favorite things to do to add a cardio component, I just set a running clock and I do sets 10 and 10, 10 push-ups, 10 squats, 10 push-ups, 10 squats, go till I get 120 of those, partition however you want. Maybe it's 5 and 5, whatever it is, right? One of my favorite no excuse things takes me under 15 minutes. And it's like, cool, I worked out today. I did something today. It's better than nothing. Even if I missed a training session, even if I'm traveling, even if I'm busy, there's basically no excuse for me not to do it. Phil, what's one of your benefits?
So what you just said is what typically I run into as well. If I'm ever on the road, it's really nice that you can just use body weight literally wherever you are. I also find that because body weight feels easier when you're first starting, it has a sense of almost feeling passive. So like if I'm listening to a podcast or I have something going on in front of me that's like sort of a distraction, if your mechanics are solid enough, like if you have a solid body weight squat and, it's just like you move through the motions, it's nice to be able to like not feel like, okay, I'm going to my 1 rep max and that's going to be difficult and I have to put all my focus on it. You can really get through a body weight workout in a way that I find to be a bit more casual while still going to failure. So I'm similar in your space, rather than partitioning out a certain top end, I will be like, okay, I have a minimum that I need to hit. But then if I'm doing squats, I'm going until it actually feels like I'm getting close to failure, which is a lot of volume, but you can do it fairly quickly.
To ping pong it back to myself, I love that bodyweight training gives me a mental break. No matter what modality I'm training in, and I've trained in a number over the years, weightlifting, powerlifting style stuff, CrossFit, kettlebell sport, just general bodybuilding, hypertrophy training. Bodyweight training gives me a mental break when the slog of training starts to wear down on me, right? And that does happen. And I think that we as lifters underestimate how impactful it can be to take a week, not even necessarily as a deload, but just to train in a different modality to remind ourselves we like the novelty. So that's something I love about bodyweight training. And I'll even go on barbend.com and look up bodyweight training workouts or have someone just program a bunch of bodyweight training for me for a week or two. I'm not really sometimes I'll actually gain fitness and strength, believe it or not, from that. But I'm also creating a different thought pattern and I'm reminding myself that I enjoy training. It makes me look forward to getting back to whatever I was doing when I need that mental break.
I literally was on a trip this past weekend where I did do some bodyweight training in my hotel room. And one of the things that's helpful in terms of figuring out the programming for that is I go back to the fundamental movements that your body can do. You can push, you can pull, you can squat, and you can hip hinge. And so doing movements that encapsulate all 4 of those movements is really helpful to be like, okay, that's a full workout. I figured out how to do any type of pulling exercise, some kind of pushing exercise, a hip hinge of some kind, and a squat. For the most part, if you encompass all of those movements, you get a full workout and it feels good. I got a sweat on. I felt great afterwards. It helps me stay in tune with where I have like hiccups in my mobility, if that makes sense. So like when I'm doing like my body weight squats and stuff, I'm like, ooh, my ankle does not feel as quite the way on my right as it does on my left, or like my knees or something like that. So it helps me stay in touch with like making sure that I'm stretching properly, that I'm taking care of my mobility training, stuff like that, to not get injured. Essentially, it helps me stay in tune with my body.
And I want to point out, bodyweight training can take a lot of different forms. Calisthenics, which we've mostly been talking about, more advanced gymnastics. It's a great way to learn new skills, right? Work up till planche or something like that. Learn strict muscle ups. I mean, these are things you can work toward. They're nice goals. Yoga and Pilates. Pilates, I know oftentimes you're using a reformer, but I would put those under a form of bodyweight training, more mobility and core dominated and biased. All right, Phil, I hate tracking macros. I hate it.
Same. You and me both.
When Phil and I shared an office, we're remote now, and we shared an office. I used to come into the office, and for lunch, I would eat a full rotisserie chicken with hot sauce and like an apple. That was like my lunch. And Phil didn't judge me. Lots of other people did. But I hate tracking macros. My macro tracking was 1 chicken. That was it. That was my macro tracking. But there's one macronutrient I've taught myself to love to track. Phil, do you have a guess what it is?
I'm going to guess it is not carbs.
Not carbs.
Not carbs. Nailed it. I am too good at this game.
What else you got? Can we narrow it down even further?
I'm going to narrow it down further. I got to say, it feels like this is a straightforward layup, and I'm going to lay it right up and say that it is protein David Tao.
It's protein David Tao. Protein David Tao. Listen, we have a great article we linked in the description below and in a card probably like here by former BarBend nutrition editor Nick English, who knows a thing or two about macronutrients. Look, the old protein tip, a gram per pound of body weight, it's probably not true. And it's almost certainly not specifically optimal for everybody, right? We're all individuals. We're all unique, beautiful snowflakes. But I love that article still emphasizes that protein is really important and it's very easy for us to not get enough. Part of that reason is because protein is like the most expensive and hardest to get macronutrient and quality. Processed food is all based around easy fats and carbs, right? It's easy to get fats and carbs. It's hard to get quality, complete proteins at scale, right? And so the reason I tell people, and I'm saying it right now, if you hate tracking macronutrients, still track protein, is because it's the hardest one to get. The others are easy to come by in just a general Western diet. Protein, you really got to prioritize. And if you start with protein, if you base every meal around quality protein, other things start to fall into place. Phil, I know you got some examples about how tough it is to get protein.
Yeah, so like you said, it's a lot easier to get fat and carbs anywhere. Those things taste good, they're cheap, and they're available. I personally also hate tracking macros. When I was tracking macros trying to slim down, what I found was it became, when I would look at a meal, all I was thinking about was the numbers. And now all of a sudden I'm developing a negative relationship to food. And that made it impossible to sustain. It was just so difficult. But when you move over and you just track your protein, where you just hit your protein target for the day, that also helps me with my meal prepping, because what I'll do is I won't necessarily meal prep everything. I will only meal prep my protein to ensure that I hit my numbers, because it's way easier wherever you are to find carbs or to find fat. Like that stuff, you can fill in the gaps based on how you're feeling and what you're in the mood for. But like, as long as you know that you have your protein set, it makes everything way easier. And then also feels like you have more freedom within your diet while still managing to hit your macros to like the general range that you're looking for by the end of the week.
I love that tip. If you don't want to do anything else, just meal prep your protein and then fill in the gaps, graze to fill in the gaps. I absolutely love that, Phil. Well, let's talk about the third component. Again, these aren't resolutions. We're not saying you got to resolve and publicly post on the Twitter, Instagram, X, whatever it is that you're doing these. Although make a TikTok vid. We'll watch it. Send it to us. But the third component here is something I've personally struggled with quite a bit. Which is sleep. And Phil, I've actually over the years talked to you about how much I've struggled with sleep. I've mentioned it when we've been on the road together. I've mentioned it just kind of in passing. You've even been like, hey man, you're looking a little down today. What's going on? Because I am someone who's always struggled with sleep hygiene. I'm not one of those people who falls asleep very quickly. Phil, I know we've talked about some of these, but what are some things to keep in mind when it comes to sleep's impact on performance, specifically muscle growth and maintenance?
I think sleep might be the most underrated improvement technique for your gains in training. One of the things that always comes to mind for me, 5 times fittest man on earth, Matt Frazier, said it best. He said if every athlete could just take a pill like for sleep and water, like if there was just a supplement of sleep and water that they could take, everyone would take it because it would feel like cheating. That's how important sleep is, and how detrimental it is if you actually can't maximize it in a way that's like effective for what you do day to day. And I'm similar to you. I'm not one of the kinds of people that can like hit the pillow and fall asleep. I think that's a superpower. Everybody is like, if there's ever the time where it's like, if you had a superpower, what would it be? People are like, oh, I'd love to be able to fly or, become invisible. I'm like, I want to be able to control when I fall asleep.
100%.
That would be amazing. And that would be the game changer for so many things. I mean, look at any research of the past 50 years. Everything suggests that if you improve your sleep, every other modality in your training, every other part of your waking life is just fundamentally improved by better sleep, more consistent sleep, getting that recovery in.
75% for most people of growth hormone is produced during sleep. If that's not a stat that gets you to pay attention, I don't know what is. Phil, let's ping pong back and forth. Give the folks some sleep hygiene tips.
2 very important things. When you go to sleep, 2 benefits that you can have: make sure it's dark, make sure it's cold. You sleep better when it is very dark. Light will affect your sleep. And you will sleep better when it's cold. If you're sleeping in a very hot environment, that's not going to lead to better sleep. You want to be somewhere in the low 60s range. I get that sounds pretty cold, but like if you can get to 62, 64, 66 degrees in that range, that's going to be more optimal for your sleep than sleeping in like 76, 78 where it's really hot, because then your body will have to like calibrate for that while you sleep, and you will feel drained when you wake up. If you've ever felt sweaty and depleted when you wake up, it's probably because it was too hot.
When it comes to sleeping in a dark place, eye masks. I'm a big, big fan of wearing eye masks. I know it seems really like something your grandma would do or grandpa would do. I love it. Kind of a game changer for me. One thing I really like, avoiding caffeine before bed. I know that seems really like obvious, but like avoiding caffeine after 5 p.m. for me. I go to bed around like 11 p.m., 11:30 p.m. I kind of wish that was a little earlier. I avoid hard hard stop on caffeine at 5 p.m. and really most days hard stop on caffeine at 2 p.m. So caffeine has a half-life. It does stay in your system. It does impact your ability to fall asleep and get restful sleep. So it's not just like, oh, stop it, right before bed. Stop it hours and hours before bed. Honestly, if you can make sure you don't have any caffeine 10 hours before bed, that's probably more optimal. For me, absolutely nothing with caffeine after 5 p.m. if I'm going to bed at like 11:30 p.m. But really, ideally, nothing after like 1 or 2 p.m.
Yeah, it's tough to say no to that Coke Zero. I'm a man who loves me a good cappuccino, but you gotta keep it out of your system if you want to get some good sleep. I have found something that's also pretty useful if you ever are struggling falling asleep, something that has worked for me in the past, especially if my mind is racing or if I'm thinking about different things about the day that passed or the days to come. Focusing on something that calms your mind down. Mm-hmm. So typically what I'll do if my mind is racing, I'll do something like consciously think about my breathing, mm-hmm. and I will count my breaths to give my mind a task that is sort of a placid task to just keep my mind from veering into a space where I'm now thinking about things that are keeping me up, that are stimulating thoughts. And that helps me relax and fall asleep. So if meditation is essentially what that is, or some variation of meditation, and that can be helpful as well.
Even before I fall asleep, I'll start dimming my lights before bed. And I've started to read before bed. I am not someone who ever really enjoyed that, especially as a kid. I know some people like that. But putting your body into a more relaxed state. Look, screen time before bed, it's bad. Screen time is bad. If you can shift that to reading before bed, at least you're doing something. I get bored very easily, so I want to be doing something. Dimming the lights a bit, moving to a physical page, like reading physical books, definitely something that helps me get myself in a more calm and relaxed state. There is also some research that suggests stretching for 5 to 10 minutes before bed, like not intense yoga, right? But like very gentle stretches. And there are some good routines you can find online about this. Helps put your body in a more parasympathetic state, your nervous system in a more parasympathetic nervous state, which could help you achieve better sleep faster, right? So some light stretching before bed, not vigorous activity, but light stretching in addition to like dimming lights, staying away from screens as much as possible. That could also help you ease into more restful sleep.
A general idea of that as well is if you sit for a lot of the day and then you go to bed, what will typically happen is you might feel uncomfortable because your blood is pooled in your legs if you've been sitting for a long time. So getting a little bit of blood flow at the end through light stretching or a little bit of yoga like that can help balance that out before you're laying down. And that can also make it so you're more comfortable when you sleep and not feel like you're tussling and turning as your body's readjusting.
Avoiding heavy foods before bed. I personally avoid foods starting about 2 hours before bed. There's some research that suggests that can be beneficial for sleep. Personally, also, and again, this is not medical advice, I like to make sure I'm supplementing a little extra magnesium in my diet, right? That's something that I think I commonly come in under when it comes to daily consumption. And I think a lot of folks do. So I supplement with a little bit of magnesium. I'm not going to recommend a particular supplement here, but that has helped me get more relaxing, restful sleep, especially in days or nights after difficult training sessions. So that kind of helps me get a little bit more calm and get a little bit more relaxed and basically achieve better, more restful sleep throughout the night. Magnesium.
Yeah, Kent also confirm that avoiding heavy foods. For many years in my adolescence, I just ate a gigantic chocolate ganache cake every single night before bed, and I had the worst sleep of my life. So Kent confirm, if you want to stay away from the heavy foods, stay away from the cake. David, I'm also being facetious. I didn't eat a chocolate ganache cake, let's be real. It was only funfetti.
There's a lot there. There's a lot to unpack, and that might be on a different recording. And I am not a licensed therapist, so I can't really give Phil the full listening ear he needs on that one. Look, folks, sleep is important. It's worth investing in. It's worth prioritizing, and it's worth building your evenings around. That's the last thing I'll say. But look, these are just things that we like to prioritize and we wanted to share, and that we think all strength athletes can benefit from. And the research suggests it's true. There you have it. 2024. I resolve, I can't believe I'm saying that, to do more body weight training, to more closely track my protein intake, and to improve my sleep hygiene. Those are 3 things I'm saying for 2024. Phil Bleckman, I do hope you join me in those. And for everyone watching at home, we hope you join as well. But until then, it's been a kickoff New Year episode of Strength Weekly. We'll be back with regularly scheduled programming and news next week. Hope you all enjoy the holidays. Phil, as always, it's a pleasure and honor, sir.
Pleasure and honor, sir.